So now, anybody seen this fancy diagram before at all? This is how injuries happen. And this is when patients come into our office and they're like, you know, I don't know why I've got this calf strain now. I've never had that before. And I'll say, well, you've never been 50 either. No, I don't say that. I don't say that. But they don't understand why the injury happened. Right? You get this pain out of nowhere. Doesn't make any sense. There wasn't an event. You didn't trip and sprain your ankle and have a traumatic event. So the overuse thing is this silent thing that goes on and on for a while, and it's really following this. So let's go back to starting, let me get myself there, to this overwork, okay? When we go back to the previous diagram and we talk about the insult to the tissue, it's an overwork situation. Can we agree that running 200 miles is overwork? Okay, can we at least start there? Okay, and again, whether it's 18 holes of golf 3 times a week, that can be overwork. If it's sitting at a desk for how many hours a week, that's overwork. Sitting is one of the hardest things you can do. And what the problem is that how many people here sit at a desk for a living? Right? There's this interesting relationship with endurance sports. Would everybody agree it's not a cheap sport, right? It's not a cheap sport. So you have to have a good job to be able to do it too, right? So a lot of times the jobs, you're sitting, and we're gonna have overwork, and a lot of times you're gonna carry that with you to the bike, to the run, to the swim. And so you're in a state of overwork. You have to overload the body to get better. I mean, Paul, you know that, right? Like that's part of training, and is you gotta overload the system to a certain extent to be able to get the results that you want. But what ends up happening is this overwork is going to result in potentially weak and tight muscles. Every muscle in your body has a tendency to either become weak or a tendency to become tight, right? So how about the hamstrings? What do those tend to become? Tight, right? How about the abs? Not tight, right? How about the glutes? Definitely not tight either, right? So there's certain muscles tend to become weak and certain ones tend to become tight. Anybody deal with IT band syndrome in the past? Tends to become tight, but as I'll show later, it could be a weak thing. For sure. So we end up with these potentially weak and tight muscles in the body that we're not necessarily aware of. Okay? What ends up happening is when that goes on, it creates a friction, pressure, or tension in the area. Anybody ever have like those knots in their upper trap from sitting at a desk or anything? That's going to be that tension that's placed on that particular muscle. Okay? I'll give you an example of a friction. I mentioned the IT band syndrome. That IT band actually crosses the knee joint and there's a bony prominence right there, and it ends up causing some friction right on that area, and then it goes on for a while and it lays dormant until all of a sudden it feels like someone's stabbing you in the side of the knee, and now you have IT band syndrome. Well, that friction was happening for a while there, and I'm gonna give that as an example in a little bit of how that happens. When you have friction, pressure, or tension in an area, you get a potential decreased circulation to the area, and ultimately, the big fancy word there, $1 million word, is hypoxia, a lack of oxygen. Blood carries oxygen to the area. You gotta have that happening to heal. Anybody here torn a labrum in the shoulder before? There's no blood supply to it, so it can't heal itself. That's why you have to have surgery. If you don't have to have surgery with torn labrum, but if you're gonna be a pitcher or something like that, you gotta have surgery because there's no blood supply. And so what's happening is when we get to here, we're starting to lay down a situation that's gonna cause scar tissue, adhesions, fibrosis, whatever you wanna call it. But it's just called scar tissue or a knot. It's gonna lay down in that area, and then ultimately it's gonna cause a lack of vascularization to that area to get the blood flow and the oxygen and all the nutrients to heal that area. And then if I give you a bunch of scar tissue in the hamstring, what do you think is going to happen to that hamstring? What's it going to tend to become? Tighter, right? When we riddle a muscle, tendon, ligament, whatever, which is for the sake of argument, a muscle, when we riddle it with scar tissue, it's going to impact its ability to function as it should, right? If I did the glute medius, right here we see that a lot, what's going to happen to that glute? It's not going to stabilize, it's going to tend to become weaker. And so this causes more weakness and tightness to happen. So we end up just feeding this dysfunction and we don't know about it. It's just laying silent, right? And then all of a sudden, finally, the straw that breaks the camel's back and the alarm system goes off, inflammation, pain. I've now got an injury that I had no idea why it happened. And it's not because you're 50. Okay? It could be, but it maybe not. And so this is what's happening in the body when we sit too long, run, train, anything like that. This is what is happening. And so we need to really try to work on fixing this here, okay? And I'll show you how we can do that a little bit.